The goals for this activity are to first define and explain what economy is, and this is in the context of Henry David Thoreau's chapter called Economy in his novel Walden, where he focuses on how to live as economically, as simply as possible. Second, to examine your own values by simplifying a budget, and you can find this on page 11 of your Transcendentalism packet. And finally, this is going to be the springboard to blog number 3, that you're going to write a 150 or more word reaction to this experience and focus on what you economize in your life in order to meet the budget goals. So, as a quick introduction to this activity, we should all consider what is work-life balance. And looking at this graph, we see that the US doesn't exactly register in this regard. Now, this is hardly across the board. There are plenty of jobs that would offer ample vacation time. Also, being a teacher obviously allows that. But on the whole, there are many people who are working basically without any paid vacation or paid holiday. And this has an impact on things. And it's not the only model for how to live. You look at this chart and you see that many European countries, Scandinavian countries in particular, offer a lot of paid annual leave and paid holidays as well, giving you over a month in many cases off work over the course of the year. And many use this kind of simple statement to summarize it, that in the United States, people tend to live to work, that work is their life, rather than working to live, which is more of like the European perspective, that you do your job and then when you leave, you're able to enjoy the things that you want to in life and use the money from it and so on for those opportunities. And I want to review as well what the word economy means in this regard. And that is that you can work as little as possible. I mean, that's ultimately what people like Thoreau and even McCandless are going for, is how can you work as little as possible and stretch it as far as you can so that there's plenty of time for you to enjoy the things that you value. Many of you are probably aware that places like Denmark and other European countries will often show up at the top of lists of happiest countries in the world. And so, obviously, to change the American perspective on things and to change the American economy is quite a tall order. And so rather than doing that, let's consider that we are free Americans. We can live the way that we want. There are no restrictions on that. And that if you wish to economize your own life, you'd be free to do so. The challenge, of course, is handling the pressures that society put on us to simply work and to follow the stereotypical American dream, which is, again, if that is what you want, then more power to you. But a lot of people become overwhelmed by this and come to the realization that perhaps that is not what makes them happy. And so this activity basically helps you to appreciate that. And for this, you can work with 1 or 2 other students. Read over the scenario that's at the top of page 11, and it gives you some more details as to how this made-up person who has found himself or herself in massive debt in just a year. You can see that the person has a pretty good job, not a wonderful job that pays hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, but most of you would probably be happy with an entry-level position that paid $50,000 a year coming out of college. And that means, of course, that you take home about $35,000 of that. And so if you look at the current budget that's there, there are a lot of frivolous things on there, but I kind of designed this as a way to look at how you were raised with probably most of these things at your disposal, and that many people end up going off into the real world or whatever you want to call it and try to maintain that level when they really can't based on the job that they have. And so there are plenty of frivolous things on there that are pretty easy to cut out. Others, however, you might have to be creative and think. And what you're going to do is if you look at the third column, that's what you're filling in. You should discuss each item, conduct some Google searches. A lot of stuff I know will be blocked in terms of Craigslist and stuff like that to find out what things cost. But I still think you'd be able to get an idea as to what a median house price in Pittsburgh is and what it costs to rent it per month, and then to think about how to make that as cheap as possible. It also might be good to ask me or any other adult before determining some of these prices, like what things can cost, and to consider what you want to really cut out of your life and what you actually need. The reason I have this song on this page is it's referenced a few times in the book. And basically, it's about the freedom of hitchhiking, jumping trains, and it's the absolute extreme of economy. And he talks in this about how you can make a couple bucks just being a janitor, and you have next to nothing in your life, but he's the king of the road as a result. And so we're just kind of applying this a little bit more to our future lives. I'm going to use the first row of the budget as a quick sample here. And so you can see that for right now, this person's paying $1,380 per month for shelter. That includes a $1,200 a month apartment, which is pretty expensive for Pittsburgh. That would be like if you wanted to go get a 2-bedroom apartment in Shadyside, or maybe somewhere with an obstructed view in Mount Washington or downtown or in the Strip District or Lawrenceville. But you should Google it and see what the average cost is to rent a house in the area. And that's something that a lot of people don't think of, that you think that once you get out of school that you're going to be able to live independently, live by yourself. That's what people want. But at the same time, it'd be a lot cheaper to share a house with several people. And so what would that do? How could you cut it down? How could you cut it down if you lived in another area of the city? Maybe you want to go somewhere like Dormont or even Beachview or Crafton. How far would you go? To what degree would you sacrifice comfort or even safety in order to save money? There isn't a lot that we could do in regards to heat and electricity, but you could minimize those. You can definitely reduce the cost of those simply by not turning the heat up as high, or making sure that you're only using electricity for what you need. So those things you could probably cut down, but not completely. We need those things on some level. And so once you've gone through the budget, thought about each item, talked about it with a partner, looked some things up online, maybe talked to an adult about it. Once you've gone through all that, you don't have to get every number to work perfectly. And maybe you figure out that there's no way that you can sacrifice enough in your life to get it down to $25,000 a year of spending. And that's fine. But we want to make sure that we have enough to write about for the blog. And this one's a little shorter, 150 words or more, where we're basically just giving the gist as to how you were able to meet your goal or why you weren't able to meet your goal. And so rather than giving every single detail as to how you simplified your life, instead put down some of the more important things, or the things that you could write about and reflect upon as to whether or not you really needed those things, or maybe there are some areas that you would never part with, like exercise or your health in general, like what you're putting into your body, and decide, what do I really need to live, and what did the exercise bring out? What did you notice in terms of giving certain things up? And do you think you would realistically be able to live that way, at least for a couple of years, to save up the money so that you can get yourself out of the situation that you're in? And so once you're ready, you can go ahead and do the write-up, and I will post that blog. That is blog number 3. Blog number 4 is going to be about, once you've saved $10,000 a year for a couple of years, what would you go and do if you're able to get away from the job that you don't like? What would you really want to go do with your life if you had that time? Thanks for listening.